welcome back here to Talking Your Walk. And this morning I've got with me the wonderful Alison. She also goes by the name Rowanna, and she's a psychic tarot card reader. She's also a Reiki master and teaches many courses in Shrewsbury, has done for many years now. And it's a great pleasure to have you with us this morning, Alison. Can you tell me, you're living in Shrewsbury, but did you always come from Shropshire? Was this where you were born?
No, not at all. I ended up coming up here in around about 2003 for work purposes, but I was born and bred in Plymouth in South Devon. I left there when I was about 19 to join the military, which I know doesn't quite gel with what I do now, but that's a long story. So no, I'm a Plymouth girl.
And what kind of child were you? Because I see that you do the psychic. Was that something that you felt as a youngster, or was this something that came to you when you're a bit older?
I was very, very that way inclined as far back as I can remember as a child. But I have to say, I do think that virtually all of us are anyway. I think when we're children, we're much more open to, just more natural energies and the earth and what's around us. We're much more open to things. And I think for many cases that just simply gets conditioned out of us, not necessarily on purpose, but the more we come into, everyday life and school and home and so on. I think for many of us, it just kind of gets put to one side and we sort of lose it. I was very, very, very aware of colours, spirit. I can remember so many experiences where as a child seemed quite natural, and when I got older I realised I possibly stood out a little bit. I was just aware of a lot of sounds and visions and things, but again I really don't think that makes me too much different from a lot of other children. I used to play with I was fascinated by magic with a K, and sort of and being in Plymouth, Dartmoor fascinated me. Ancient legends and really old kind of indigenous kind of feelings. I did used to play with sort of any pictures and cards and things I could lay my hands on, and what we call divination, just throw things around and look at them, and aware of sort of, if I saw a bird I'd get a certain feeling from what that meant. So maybe I was a little bit more open to it, but I always kept that off to one side, even when I kind of got on with daily life, to be honest.
Okay, so then, when you left school, what did you do? You're saying you went into the military, but was that something that you did straight from school, or did you do other things and then decide to join?
I did. It was quite curious. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I went to an air day in Plymouth, and I was fascinated, absolutely fascinated that things could take off and fly through the air. At the time, it just amazed me. When I was about 10 or 11 years old, quite bizarrely, I decided I wanted to be a pilot, preferably a fast jet pilot or something of that nature, which of course I was born in 65, so by the mid-70s this was not something that women were doing or even allowed to do. And I was really had this great idea of being, I don't know, remember the Red Arrows or something like that at the time. So I kind of stuck with that. And when I got to 12, 13, 14 and really looked into careers, I wasn't allowed to fly then as a female. So I ended up wanting to go into air traffic control. And it seems, like I say, quite incongruous with what I do now and the other sort of more psychic aspect of me. But actually, having looked at my whole life path, which is all many lessons about power, power structures and restrictions versus freedom, it all kind of made a lot more sense. So I knew that I always wanted to do that for a long time. So that's kind of what I aimed for. But of course, I had to sort of get qualifications and wait a while. And those days there was quite a queue before you could join up. So I had a Saturday job in House of Fraser as a retail assistant. And then I did a temporary job after my A-levels for about 6-7 months at Debenhams on the toy department, which doesn't sound very exciting, but I absolutely loved it. And I think if I had not been accepted in the military path, quite strangely, I would have stayed, following a career in that area, because I just love the interaction with people. But no, I did actually go and get selected, and off I went for 20 years of air traffic controlling.
Whoa, 20 years air traffic control, that's amazing. But that's a very stressful job as well, isn't it?
It's you have to be intellectually sort of, it's a lot of brain puzzling. It's like knitting spaghetti. Mental agility, I think, is the word. You don't have to particularly, it's just something that you've got an aptitude for, because obviously you have to do tests and things to see if you've got a leaning towards that. Yeah, there was a lot of mental agility involved. It had its moments. It was very, very stressful at times. A lot of pressure. But I really responded to that.
How did you cope with the pressure? Because there's a lot of pressure, as we know at the moment, with people, during COVID. How did you respond to that pressure?
The general, there were a couple of aspects. For me as a person, I discovered when I was 19 or 20 years old that I could dance, and I loved dancing. So every spare moment I was in a nightclub. But it was a very kind of work hard, play hard lifestyle. So we did have in all sort of branches, and I don't know if it probably sort of is quite a long tradition anyway. You did work extremely hard, but then you played hard. You did have a lot of get-togethers, social functions, and fun things. And people invented or made up all sorts of fun events and things. So that really is quite a high sort of high level kind of lifestyle adrenaline, I would say. I did learn that I found that actually I was quite naturally able to detach a little bit. So although I like the adrenaline, you can switch off at the same time. And I think you just have to, now I know it's called centering or grounding and just taking deep breaths, and you kind of detach a little bit without getting too emotionally involved. I think I would compare it to, say, if you were walking down the street and God forbid there was a bit of a road accident, and you know that you could look at it and think you know you needed to help, you would just do it. You get on with it. You haven't got time to go, and get too worked up about it. So although that's a bit of a dramatic example, that's a similar kind of principle. So I think when we're under pressure like we are now as well, or some people can feel that pressure, you've really got to go back into, without being too, and I never like the word spiritual, because because I know people can take that and think it's not something they can connect with. But it's just simply sitting somewhere peacefully. And sort of when I say going within, it means just sitting peacefully and not actually doing anything. Sitting on the earth, laying on the earth in a star shape is a wonderful thing. If you can do that, it's so powerful. Or just touching earth, or just taking deep breaths and just regaining yourself. Those things are really important. And I realized that when I did that high pressure job, that was actually what we used to do a lot of. Take the deep breath and you just focus on what you need to deal with at the time. And obviously you do need to have an outlet, anything creative, musical. I mean, running, if you're not a runner or you don't like physical exercise, as much walking and physical exercise as you can do is a huge stress reliever as well.
Yeah. So you've done your 20 years. So is that how you ended up in Shropshire? Did you get transferred here with your job?
Yeah, my last job specifically, because you move around different locations and have slightly different posts and things within the kind of under the big umbrella. And my last job was as an instructor. So I was teaching people to become air traffickers. So I was an air traffic instructor, and that's based in Shropshire. So I ended up coming up here, and I'd actually been due to leave a little bit before that, because you were contracted to certain amounts of time. And I was living near Watford. Now, no disrespect to Watford, but I had a small child at the time. It just didn't feel somewhere I wanted to settle. And so I asked if I could do an extra couple of years, and they said, yeah, we'd really like you as an instructor, and it's Shropshire. So I always wanted somewhere a little bit more rural. Having been a Plymouth girl, South Devon sort of place, I wanted somewhere that I felt was a bit more, somewhere if I was going to end up staying there, would be a bit more suitable for that. So that's how I ended up coming up here, and I ended up staying here as it happened,
Oh, so then how did you get into the psychic side? I know you were saying that you always had those tendencies as a child and sort of put it to a side. Was it when you left that you then allowed it to come in and then form the next part of your life? Or how did...
So for several different aspects, really. First of all, I would have to say by the last few years of my job, because that kind of, not so much the air trafficking, but military or something very structured in general, by default can be quite suppressing as a person. Now, my childhood was, in a nutshell, pretty horrific. There was a huge amount of violence, there was abuse, I experienced abuse, there was alcoholism, there was just mental health. I mean, it's just a whole volume in itself. And I had put that to one side, as you do, got on with life. There were lots of events and things. I was an only child, which I think actually helped strangely. But, you know, what happened in the house was very different from how people saw things outside, maybe. So that had always been suppressed. And I developed, I had an addiction of about 40 cigarettes a day. Because of my job, I didn't do drugs. Wouldn't have been allowed, wasn't something I turned to. It was really my big addiction was smoking. And that suppressed everything. And by the time I'm getting ready to leave, I've had enough of not being me, because even, I mean, as a female, your hair could either be tied up or short. You couldn't have, you know, there was this lack of freedom of expression just by the nature of it. So when I was leaving, I went through a very difficult time with a difficult split. And I trained to be a driving instructor. And while I was training, a chap I was working with said, look, you need to go and see this woman. Because I was really depressed and really struggling. And I said, what woman? And he said, just, this is her name, this is her phone number, go and see her. And I never even asked. It never occurred to me, what for? I drove off to Wales. And I went to see this lady who turned out to be a huge life turning point, very special heritage that she has, but never made a big thing of that. And she was what you might call a wise woman. And she said, we'll do the cards for you. So she is a full-on wise woman, psychic, healer, card reader. And she did a reading for me. And I said, well, I already do this kind of thing a bit, but I've been back into it because I've been playing with my cards, if you like, for the last year or two. So the reading did a lot for me because she put a lot of healing into that. I remember walking out the door and it felt like something punched me in the back on the way out. I drove back, and on the way back, the tears are flooding down my face. So this is my personal healing started to click in. Something opened, and it was this weird kind of experience. I felt like somebody was holding my hand and lifting me up. That also opened up my awareness that I'd had when I was a child much more. So by the time I went for the next reading, I became her apprentice.
Wow.
And she taught me things that you're never going to find in a book. So the two kind of went hand in hand. Then I went on this journey, a bit of which you know about, because then I started tackling the addiction, because I was going to move into a new household and I wanted to not want to smoke. And that was the thing with the addiction. I found that whatever it is I wanted to not feel the need. I didn't want to go cold turkey and spend my life wanting a cigarette. I wanted to not be addicted to anything, not want to. So I went for hypnoanalysis, which is not hypnosis. It's deep relaxation where you, in your own time, you talk about stuff. I did 11 sessions at a potential 12. And that turned the key to facing the abuse and starting to really deal with that. Incredibly powerful. It took several months. It worked when I didn't smoke again. After those few weeks, I never smoked again, never wanted to. And that unleashed. From hypnoanalysis, I went to reflexology because I was covered in acne. I had a lot of health problems. The lady that taught me that did my reflexology for me, taught me about, she was quite into angels, which was a thing I hadn't looked at before. And she said, oh, I know this woman called June who does Reiki, and you need to go and see June Meagher. And I said, what's Reiki? What do you do? And she said, don't worry about it, just go. So I came to you for my first lesson, and the rest is history.
So you know, that's an awful lot of changes, isn't it, through a lifetime? You know, moving from Plymouth, although it's a large city, it's still in a rural location. It's not, you know, the millions of people that you would find in Watford, you know, because it's on the outskirts of London. But it's also, you know, leaving a job that you really enjoyed, joining, an air traffic controller. That must have been enormous pressure. Then going on to be an instructor, the changes and the stresses and things like that involved with that. And then changing your life completely around, Do you have any regrets, or do you have any tips on how to deal with change like that?
The thing, you've just got to be open. If you're not happy with the way things are in your life, whatever that may be, it just means that you think, let's say as an example, you think, oh, I'm short of money. I've got this credit card I need to pay off. I never seem to have enough money. You have to sort of just put it out there. Now, it can be that you just, I tell you what, actually, when I was doing a driving instruction, I only did it for about 18 months, 2 years. It wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I was driving in my car, having taught somebody. It was okay. I did okay with it. And I was driving on the A49 up towards Battlefield Roundabout. And I'd had enough. And I just started having a reading from, it was just after my first reading for me that Viv had done. And I actually shouted out in the car, and I had no idea who or what I was shouting to, but I said, I'd had enough. I want to do a job I love. And I didn't know who or what I was talking to. I said, I want to do a job I love. I want to be helping people more. I want to do something I feel is more contributing. And I shouted out what I wanted. 2 weeks later, she said, I'll train you. Oh, okay. You've just got to put that energy out there. If you're short of money, you have to have this feeling of, not I am short of money, but it's like a positive affirmation. I have money, or you visualize, or you imagine, or you feel what it would feel like to be happy in a job, or to be in the relationship you want, or to be living somewhere else. You start to make that feeling happen, and you sort of bring that kind of energy and feeling in, and then things will change, but you've got to be ready and willing to change. So, for example, if you then get an offer of, for example, a job that you might not like, and it's temporary, but it's something that is a stepping stone, and you could bite the bullet for 3 months, because the universe is saying, look, here's a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Take the opportunity. If you're short of money and you've got all this credit card, be responsible. You may be able to pay it off, but you've got to rein in your spending habits. You've got to take your bit of responsibility. And certainly with healing the abuse and things like that, if you've got trauma and things of that nature that you think, well, it's somebody else, what they've done to me, stop carrying their conscience, because that was their responsibility. But you carrying it is blocking your movement. You can step away from that. It's like lost property bags. You can't carry every lost property bag. Just pick up your own rucksack, but it's still your rucksack, and leave the others for someone else and take their responsibility.
So now you're doing your readings much more, frequently. You do all the events. You've been doing that for years. You've been on the circuit for a long time now. If people watching this would like to get in touch with you for a reading, what's the best way that they can do that?
I've got a Facebook page called Rowanna Tarot / Psychic Readings. I've got a website, rowannatarotreadings.co.uk. Contact me through either of those. I'm very happy just to chat. There is no obligation. All the information about what I do and charge and so on is on the website. But I'm very happy just to have a chat, either a message or a verbal phone call, if you're thinking about it. And you can have a chat with me, and you can go away and never contact me again if you want to. That's fine. Because I've so many people in my life that have sown a seed. And I feel that's sometimes all you need to do, sow the seed. And each of us has to come round to this in our own time. I was obviously ready to learn and to take up the things I did. I wasn't ready 10 years before that. If someone had said, you need to go and learn this or do that, I'd have gone, oh, stuff you. But when you're ready, the right people appear. And I think, if anybody wants to have a chat with me about anything, I'm very happy to do that, just as a general sort of, information call.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, well, that's grand. Well, Alison, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story and also for, joining us today, you know, because there is a lot of people out there who probably are looking to change and you know, don't even know where to begin or start, or, you know, who can help them or anything like that. And just for them to know that if they can just open themselves up and maybe follow any intuition or anything that comes in, or any opportunities, I think that's got to be helpful. It's got to be a start, isn't it?
People used to say to me, because obviously I've taught a lot of classes now with the Reiki and so on, as you know, we put a bit of life coaching and sort of other tools into that so people can take what they need. And people have said, what was your turning point? And I can say, well, the Reiki massively, the hypnoanalysis Reiki me. But at the end of the day, you are your turning point. It's just the intention of, I am willing and I would like to do something different, but I don't know what it is. And that's enough. And things will shift.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. Brilliant advice, as always. Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you, and hope to see you soon.
All right.